If you know 3,000 words in the English language, you can pretty much say everything you need to say. I'm teaching one word a day for 3,000 days. Please keep watching. Typical. This is a typical bus in the UK. Typical means everyday, normal, usual, what's expected. Normal. Why does it do that? Normal, usual. So I'm using the word normal for typical. However, if we're talking about neurodiversity, typical is has a better connotation than normal does. Usual, expected. Typical can also have a negative connotation if you're like, typical. It's what I expected. Nothing special. Nothing special is what typical means. Typical of her generosity, she bought enough food to share with everyone at the meeting. So this is characteristic of her behavior. So typical can also be characteristic. Characteristic of something is typical. Within character. Let's see. Characteristic of something is typical. The typical symptoms of the flu include fever, chills, and fatigue. So it's usual, common, it's what you expect. It was a typical day at the office, filled with emails, meetings, and paperwork. Nothing special, routine, typical. His response was typical of someone who didn't read the instructions carefully, completely off topic. So, typical means expected. What is expected in this situation? That's typical. The architecture in this neighborhood is typical of the Victorian era, with ornate details and steeply pitched roofs. So, typical can also mean a representative example. It's typical. I'm going to show you some wallpaper. So, right now I'm staying at the Luxor Hotel. And do you see this wallpaper? Right here. It's a mosaic wallpaper. It's typical, kind of flashy. It's typical of Las Vegas because it's flashy, and Las Vegas is a flashy city. So that is typical because it is what is expected, or it is a representative of what many places are like. The opposite of typical might be unusual or unexpected. Also, atypical. So sometimes if we put an A in front, like we did this with social, social, asocial, typical, atypical. And I think I would have to think about this more, but I think that you can do if it's ending in an all, then you can put an A on the front of it. Typical, atypical, social, asocial. I would have to look at more examples of that happening in order to really find out if that is a rule that we can depend on. So atypical is the opposite of typical. It means not typical. Unusual. I don't think that's a rule we can depend on, because now we're seeing it with usual. Usual also ends in an "al", and it is not unusual. It's unusual. It's unusual, not with the A in front. One might say that's because it's hard to put an A in front of a U. Usual. We don't do that. Unusual, atypical. The noun is not there. Type. Typify. Typify. And the noun would be type. So typical comes from type, not the typing on a keyboard, but type as in what kind of. Typical, if something is typical, then it is representative of that kind of something. So typify is the verb. Have you noticed in these videos, a lot of our verbs end with an if-I? Often we can take a word and put an if-I on the end of it and make it a verb. We do that with eate and with eyes as well. I-Z-E. The adjective is typical, and the adverb is typically. Hi, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and use this word 5 times today. If you have questions or comments, please put them below. I do look at those, and I am making new content all the time. So keep watching. Bye-bye.